Talking with us now on the phone line is Jimmy Kempski, writes for PhillyVoice.com, covers the Eagles. Jimmy, how you doing today?
Good, guys. How are you?
Doing well. So tonight is the infamous fourth preseason game, but there are still guys trying to either solidify their jobs or have an opportunity to get their job spots. So what are some of the things that you're walking into this game looking for tonight, Jimmy?
I'm looking for it to be over. Primarily number one. It would have been fun if Carson Wentz could have played, and we would have been able to watch him for a good 3.5 quarters more than likely. But they want to take it cautious with his injured rib, so we're not going to see him. And then you're not going to really see any starters. There aren't going to be any starting spots determined tonight. Even like the ones that are still kind of open, like left guard, for example, between Stephen Wisniewski and Isaac Seumalo. Neither of those guys are going to play, so they'll have a decision to make there, but won't be based on tonight. The one guy who is going to play, or at least they said he may play, and I don't know how happy he is about it, is Michael Kendricks. So that could be an interesting thing to watch. But otherwise, it's really just guys that are trying to make the 53-man roster, as opposed to guys that are really competing for starting jobs.
Yeah, Jimmy. Josh and I were talking earlier in the night or in the show about how Andy Reid used to talk about sticky ribs. With Carson Wentz and his rib issue, we're not going to see him. But one guy we will see is Paul Turner. Yeah, you wrote about him on PhillyVoice.com as one of the guys that you'll be watching tonight. Tell me your impressions of Paul Turner and what you think he'll be able to do.
Yeah, I think he's clearly the number 5 receiver in terms of who's on the roster right now. So you have, of course, Matthews, and you have Aguilar, and you have Huff, and you have DGB. And then after that, Turner, by far, in my opinion, is at the top of the rest of the group there, having, with the Eagles already having cut Ruben Randall and Chris Givens. So, he's a guy who's fighting for a roster spot. I don't know that it's 100% given that he's going to get it, because I think when other teams start making their cut downs, I think the Eagles are going to be shopping for a number of different positions, wide receiver included among them. So he may be one of those guys that kind of makes the team for like a day, and then is just as quickly off of it if they sign a receiver. But he had a really good showing both in training camp and in the first 2 preseason games, where he led the team in receiving. In each of the first 2 preseason games, he had a really good one-handed catch against the Steelers. And then even in the last game, he had a couple catches, so he did contribute. So, this is just one more opportunity for him to kind of stand out and do what he's done all throughout training camp the preseason. I think he deserves to make the team, but, we'll see if that happens on Saturday or not.
And then I know another area, in addition to the wide receivers, Doug Peterson said the D-backs are going to be a group that he's watching. So you highlight the name C.J. Smith.
Yeah, I thought the guy that was going to make the team as a surprise maybe was going to be Aaron Grimes, who, again, in that Steelers preseason game had that really great play. And he's played well, again, all throughout, like Turner, he's played all well throughout training camp and preseason. He had that play where he basically just ran the route for the receiver and made that spectacular catch back to the end zone for an interception. But then he got hurt. He got hurt in that game, and I'd say they didn't feel like he was going to be ready for the regular season, so maybe that's a guy that sticks on the practice squad. But the other cornerback who was also impressive, who's kind of been a little bit of a surprise to a lot of us, has been, like you mentioned, C.J. Smith, actually also from North Dakota State University, just like his buddy Carson Wentz. So they may actually have 2 former Bison on the roster. It's going to be tough to sneak him in because, again, you have 5 cornerbacks that are going to be ahead of him, with Nolan Carroll and Leotis McKelvin being the starters, and you have Brooks in the slot, and then you have Eric Rowe, who's going to make the roster, and, of course, Jalen Mills, the 7th-round pick, who had a good start to camp, tailed off a little bit, but he's going to make the team. So if they keep 6 corners, then C.J. Smith, I think, would be the guy. But, again, he's got to show tonight that he deserves to stay.
Real quick, because you mentioned Leotis McKelvin, and by the way, we had Mark Eckel on earlier in the week, and his joke was that you can't have more than one guy from North Dakota State on you, and that's why C.J. Smith was in trouble. But have you seen enough out of Leotis McKelvin? Because Mark wasn't very high on him, and of course everybody just assumes he's a starting guy and he's starting quality and of that caliber. But have you seen enough out of him?
Yeah, I've been okay with what he's done. I mean, especially early in training camp, I thought he looked good. And then as training camp went along, I didn't really notice him much, which really isn't the worst thing for a cornerback. If you're not getting beat, then you're not going to really be noticed. So I don't think – I know that a lot of people are down on him. I know that, he gave up the one play for a touchdown against the Buccaneers in that first preseason game. But I'm not as down on the corners as most people are. I actually think the cornerbacks are a little bit underrated. You look at the defense, and they have obviously the really good front four up front on the defensive line. I think their linebackers have talent, although they have to A, prove they can stay healthy, and B, prove that they have to be more consistent, i.e. Michael Kendricks on that end. And then in the back end, obviously their safeties are great with Michael Kendricks and Rodney McLeod back there. So, I think the cornerbacks kind of get a little bit, overlooked a little bit. And it is certainly, they don't have a lockdown guy. I mean, they don't have a guy who's going to go out and just shut down the best receiver for 4 quarters. They don't have anything close to that. They don't have any studs. I think they have what I would consider like 2 number 2 type of cornerbacks, which really isn't the worst thing. I mean, it's certainly better than having cornerbacks like Kerry Williams and Bradley Fletcher, like the Eagles suffered through a few years ago. But yeah, I think the cornerbacks are a little bit underrated, and I expect them to be okay. I don't expect anything great out of them this season, but I don't expect them to hurt them all that badly either.
We're talking with Jimmy Kempski. You can follow him on Twitter at Jimmy Kempski. Kempski is spelled Kempski. He also covers the Eagles for PhillyVoice.com. You mentioned Michael Kendricks earlier, and something that's interesting is that he doesn't seem very happy with how he's being handled. But couldn't I argue, Jimmy, that whether he's happy or not, maybe the Eagles are not happy with the fact that he's just not picking up the defense quickly?
Yeah, I wonder if it's that or, I don't want to speculate, but.
Go ahead. Why not?
I think he began missing practice around, I think it was like August 8th or August 9th with a pretty mild injury. And he just hasn't played. And when Doug Peterson was asked about it this week, why did he play into the fourth quarter against the Colts a week ago, which is very rare for a starter to do. And then, he was asked, will he play this week? And he said he might. And he was asked why. And he said, because he hasn't played. And that's the bottom line. So you haven't played, you got to go out and play. And I think, with a guy like Michael Kendricks, I do wonder if he thinks he's better than he really is. Like, for example, Jason Peters has been given breaks all throughout training camp. And, he's 34 years old. He's going to be 35 in January. That's a guy who has had a Hall of Fame career and earned it. And then you have a guy like Fletcher Cox who, doesn't necessarily go 100% every day in practice, but when the games matter, he's going to go out and dominate because he just has that kind of ability. And I don't think Michael Kendricks is anywhere near the level of, guys like that. He's got to go out and he's got to prove it just like everybody else, and I'm not sure that he's really done that so far this offseason.
All right, I have a bit of a tongue-in-cheek question for you, Jimmy, and that is, we got McLeod Bethel Thompson playing tonight, and this is something I'd asked kind of like jokingly earlier in the year, but is there a story behind his name? Because every time I hear his name, all I think of is the TV show Highlander.
If there is, I don't know it. Yeah, my apologies. I don't have anything to add on that. But I've just preferred. The one thing I can say about him is I've purposely left him out of notes in the past because I just know he's not going to make the team, and I just didn't feel like typing his name.
There can only be one. I haven't watched a lot of Highlander, but I know there can only be one. Right?
Yes.
That's right.
So Jimmy Kempski's with us from Philly Voice. We're talking Eagles football, and you mentioned Michael Kendricks a little bit. Another guy you were talking about this week on your Philly Voices, you crank out the articles there, is Wendell Smallwood. What's the latest on him, and is his roster spot safe?
Yeah, he's going to make the team. That's a guy that they really like. They loved him when they drafted him. And what he brings to the table is he's really just a very good receiver out of the backfield. And the way that Doug Peterson wants to be able to use his backs is that he wants to be able to move them around the formation. For example, in the third preseason game, the first game that he's played this offseason in the preseason, they slid him out wide, and they had a linebacker on him, and the play went right to him. So, they wanted to immediately take advantage of what they thought was a mismatch there against the linebacker. That's how he's going to be used. They're going to move around in the slot. They're going to have him lined up on the outside. They're going to, have him in the backfield. He's going to get his touches as a runner. And they're going to use him, I believe, this year. The problem with him is he had a quad injury, and he missed the bulk of training camp. The one thing that he really has to prove he can do is pass protection. And it's something that he wasn't good at in college. And we didn't really see him do any of it in training camp because by the time they put the pads on there hitting, he was already hurt. And then, the first preseason game, he goes out and he sustains a concussion. So he's still in the concussion protocol. He's not going to play tonight. To be determined if he's ready for the regular season. But he's a guy that they really like a lot, so they're not going to cut him. No way in hell they're going to cut that guy heading into the season. So he's going to stick on the 53-man roster. Maybe he's inactive for a couple weeks while he gets back up to speed, but he's going to be on the team.
And how about at the kicking battle? Because that's one thing that still is slightly unresolved. Do you think that Sturgis has won that job, or does Parkey still have a chance to win the position?
That's over. Yeah, no, that's going to be Sturgis. And Cody Parkey is, in my view, a good kicker, and never makes excuses when he misses kicks. And he had that first year as a rookie where he went out and really a lot of fans thought the Eagles were big trouble heading into that season because they had Alex Henry and Murder Leg were battling out for the worst kicking competition in history. And, both of those guys flamed out, and they were able to trade for Parkey. He had a great season, and he comes out in year two, and he tears every muscle in his groin. So I think, heading into this offseason, he was still affected by that injury. And, in training camp, Sturgis hit, roughly 92% of his kicks on somewhere between 40 and 50 kicks. Parkey hit about 77% of his. So, on that alone, I thought Sturgis earned the job. And then Sturgis kicked better in the preseason as well. You saw last week he had a 47-yard field goal. Parkey missed the PAT. And Sturgis really just has more leg behind his kicks as well. Whenever we watch him kick in training camp, his kicks are going further past the crossbar than Parkey's. He's kicking off longer on kickoffs, and I think he's getting more height on the ball as well on kickoffs. So, yeah, I think Sturgis has really soundly won that competition.
It's kind of a shame, though, too, because, if you stacked up the healthy Cody Parkey against the healthy Caleb Sturgis, who would you pick?
Well, Sturgis really had a really great offseason. So I think he was a really good kicker in college. He had a lot of leg at the University of Florida and was really highly regarded coming out of college. And this may be a year where he kind of breaks out. Kickers and punters were weird like that. You'd think that the speed of the game for kickers and punters really shouldn't be any different going from college to the pros. Maybe there's more pressure because you're getting a paycheck or whatever it may be. But sometimes it takes a few years for those guys to develop, and I really never understood why that was. But maybe that's just the case with him because I do think he has talent, and I do think he can be a good kicker. Maybe this is the year where he really kind of turns it on.
Jimmy, the NFL finally officially announced, after we've had multiple reports about it happening, that the 2017 NFL Draft is coming to Philadelphia. They're going to hold the festivities on the Ben Franklin Parkway, which is going to be a cool visual to say the least. But with the NFL Draft in mind, you posted an article over at Philly Voice where you talked about grocery shopping, different college players, and I kind of got excited because that's kind of my area of obsessive passion. And two of the guys you mentioned on the list, Sean Harlow of Oregon State, and then the guy from Temple, Deion Dawkins, I was like, look at Jimmy Kempski pulling stuff out of the bag.
Yeah, I do that every year. I actually wrote that. I could when you said that, I was thinking, if you're going to ask me who I have, because I don't even remember. I wrote that 3 weeks ago. But yeah, I do that every year. Where I'll preview 5 guys, usually every Saturday. I just happen to do an extra one today because the college football season kicks off tonight. They have some games Thursday night and they have some games Friday night. So I figured, I'll throw an extra 5 guys in there. So yeah, I preview 5 guys and I'll typically preview 5 guys all throughout the year on Saturdays.
So what was it about Harlow and the Temple kid Dawkins that stood out to you aside from the fact that they're offensive linemen?
Well, Harlow in particular, he's a guy who's coming from Oregon State. They drafted Isaac Seumalo out of Oregon State just 6 months ago. Not that really matters all that much, but the two things that Doug Peterson kept pointing to during the pre-draft process when we'd ask him, what do you look for in this position or that position, but particularly along the offensive line, is, he wanted guys who are versatile. So guys who play guard, or he wants, interior offensive linemen to be able to play guard and center. He wants his offensive tackles to be able to play the right side and the left side. And if you can have a guy who can play, both tackle and guard, then that's a bonus as well. And that's what Seumalo was at Oregon State. He actually played 4 out of 5 positions at Oregon State. The one position he didn't play actually there was left guard, which is where he's playing now at the Eagles. But he's obviously a guy who has versatility. And Harlow has kind of that same thing where he's played both tackle spots. Although I think most people think that he's going to move inside the guard at the next level because he just doesn't have the same kind of he doesn't have the kind of height that you look for at the tackle position. I think he's only 6'4", so they'll move him inside, and he's practiced at guard and center all throughout his career there. So he checks off that versatility box. And the other thing Doug Peterson mentioned is that he likes. I think you can say this on the radio, but he said he likes his offensive linemen to have piss and vinegar in their neck.
Yeah,
So meaning that he likes guys that are kind of feisty. So he that's another really good aspect of his game where he gets after it. He'll kind of play through the whistle, and I had one little clip of him on there where he just throws the defensive lineman to the ground and then jumps on top of him with a little bit of a mean streak there. So I think that's the guy who kind of fits all that. And then Deion Dawkins, he's a guy that is going to play tackle in the NFL to be determined if he play left or right. I think he'd probably stick at left. Maybe they move him over to right, but he's a guy who's really good in the run game. Where again, he kind of fits that feisty style. He's a bigger guy than Harlow, but he does a good guy. He does a good job of kind of moving defensive linemen against their own will.
Jimmy Kempski with us talking Eagles football as the Eagles wrap up their preseason schedule tonight against the Jets. Jimmy hoping for a running clock like in Jersey high school football. Just let that thing run. And you jokingly at the end of your 5 players to watch wrote about to see if Mike Tavares was going to stand for the national anthem.
Yeah, now it's going to be like a new thing for media. Like you got to have your binoculars out while they're playing the national anthem to see who's sitting and standing. I won't be. I will be honoring America when that's going on. But that's a new thing now that we got to watch out for is who's sitting and who's standing to the national anthem.
Pretty crazy. I know that I've been watching Hard Knocks, and they went over it. I mean, Jeff Fisher, one of the first team meetings with the whole Rams was, this is how we stand for the national anthem. And high school coaches do it. College coaches do it. I think Doug has said that he does it. They go over how they'd like them to act, but they can't force them to do it.
Right. I mean, it's as everyone's beaten to death for a week or however long it's been going on. It's your right to stand or not stand.
Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com. Enjoy the game. We'll hope for a quick one for you, pal. And then, of course, we'll be reading you with great interest on Saturday around 4 o'clock, I guess. Go to Philly Voice to see who all those cuts are, right?
That's right. Yeah, we'll have our final 53-man projection probably at the gun tonight, and then whenever they do make those cut downs, we'll have analysis of all that as well.
Yeah, Josh was wondering, do they give that to the media before Howie comes in to talk about him? And I said it's probably almost simultaneously, like it comes out and then he walks in, right?
Well, no, we don't get anything ahead of time. But I think there are some media guys who, will kind of hang out by the NovaCare complex and see guys, walking out of the building and ask them, "Hey, were you cut?"
Wow, to that extreme, huh?
which is a little awkward. I've never done that.
Hashtag stalking. Hashtag seeing a guy on his worst day.
Right. Hey, were your dreams crushed today by any chance? Right. Yeah. Oh, okay. And then so and so's been cut.
Thank you. Check.
All right. We're down to 64 now. Who's next? But yeah. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be some of that going on. But no, I mean, we don't find out before the Eagles put it out at the same time that they tell us.
That's what I thought. Jimmy Kempski has the answers to everything, Josh. That's why we have him here on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, bud. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good day.